everyone. My name is Shannon. I'm a volunteer at the Huerto Comunitario Simply Greens, which is the beds that you see back there. Today we're having a workshop on how to grow plants from seeds. So the reason for doing this is that we have a lot of beginning gardeners, and they need to know how to grow plants from seeds. The reason why I personally want to give this workshop is because when I lived in Malaysia, I was doing a lot of gardening, and I found out that the local consumer association was giving a workshop on how to grow plants. And I thought, well, this would be great. I want to learn stuff. So I went, and this is how they started. They said, if you want to grow a plant, this is what you do. You take a pot, you put some soil in it, and you put the seed in the soil. That's how you grow plants. And I was like, wow, that seems obvious to me, but I looked around and there were people taking notes in their notebooks. Literally, nobody had ever taught them how to plant seeds, right? So I think it's really important. I think being able to grow plants for food is a basic skill set of the human race. Everything we eat was produced by our ancestors that knew how to grow plants and knew how to breed them and knew how to get them to grow in certain places, and they knew how to do all this stuff. And we're living off of their skills. If we don't have those skills, what's going to happen? What's going to be our future? So that's why I'm teaching this class. ¿Me quiere interpretar?
Ella dice que ella tuvo una clase en el colegio y que la gente no sabía sembrar, poner una semilla.
Okay.
Entonces que es importante porque cómo vamos a vivir si nadie sabe sembrar.
Okay. So one thing I've done is that I've made some little handouts. This will help you sort of remember the vocabulary. You guys can share one. Okay. You guys can share one. You can share one here. Gracias. Okay. So the illustrations I'm going to show are also on this, so you can see them a little bit better. So I'm going to start off with talking a little bit. Now that you know how to grow a seed, get a pot, some soil, plant the seed. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about the botany. The botany. So botany is the study of plants, so more about the actual plants. Okay. So I wanted to show you what the inside of a seed looks like. Right. So there are two parts that are important. One is the seed coat. Right. It's very important for protecting the seed until it's ready to germinate. Let's see if I can get the vocabulary here. So, es una semilla aquí. Inside the seed is the embryo, an embrion. So this is the baby plant, the whole baby plant. The big part that you see are the cotyledons. Cotyledon son hoyos del embrión. Okay. So usually in most seeds, the cotyledons, the baby leaves, are really big because they're storing the energy for the plant. In some seeds, you can't even see the embryo because it's so small, and it needs energy to grow larger. And that energy is stored inside the seed, which is why we eat seeds, because they've got a lot of nutrition in them. La nutrición del tiesto está en los poros. Okay? So I made a little drawing here, like if you could take the embryo out and open it up so you could see it without breaking it, this is what it looks like. So these are the big leaves, the cotyledons, and this part will turn into the shoot, which is brote, raíz, and these ones are the roots that are down here. Okay, so this is the entire baby plant. So I wanted to show you, I'm going to hand out these seeds, you can hand them around. These are fava beans, and they're very easy to break open. If you break them open, you will see that right here, this tiny little thing sticking up, that's an embryo. That's how small it is. Even with this big seed, the embryo is small. Think about the tiny little seeds. They have tiny, tiny, tiny little babies inside. So I'll hand this around. So everybody take a look. If you want to take a bean and open it up and see if you can see the embryo, you can do that. Okay. Seeds are designed to be stored until the conditions are right. So las semillas esperan hasta las condiciones son bien para germinar. Emanación. Okay. So that's how the plant gets started. It is, it's dormant and it's waiting to get started, and then it gets the right conditions, and the first thing it does is it swells up with water. Okay? And the next thing that happens is that the root starts to come out. Okay? So a lot of times you can see the roots. Okay, so what I've got here these are almost identical. These seeds I put in water 2 days ago. If you look, you can see some of them are cracked, and you can see the seed coat coming off. Right? That's one thing. The seed coat has done its job. So it cubierto está abierto aquí, so that the seed can come out. So this is what happens. These are the dry seeds. So I'm going to pass these around together. This is what the dry seeds look like, and this is what the seeds look like when they get wet. Okay? So when they start to germinate, thanks to Elizabeth, we have some excellent examples of what these seeds look like when they start to germinate. They start to change drastically. First of all, they get larger, and the root starts to come out. So, ¿tiene una pregunta?
No, I thought you said something about opening the bean.
Yeah, you can open the bean if you.
But there's nothing in here.
It's kind of small, and sometimes they fall out, so you might have to open more than one.
Seeds in here?
Yeah, there's an embryo in there. Here, let me show
An
you.
embryo inside the fava bean.
One of them is already open. That it's got the embryo. You can see where it was here.
I love how the embryo looks like, you know, in
This
the
is
stage.
like the embryo chiquito. Y cae muy.
I love that.
I will show you these.
like the male. Outer.
Okay, so here we have mung beans and lentils. They're also beans, yeah, also easy for demonstration, that have germinated. So you can see they've changed color, the seed coat is coming off, and the root is coming out, and they're getting much, much bigger. So 3 days. 3 days, yeah.
On the
So
second day, it was already rooting.
So the amount of time that a seed needs depends on the kind of plant. Usually larger seeds need more time. Smaller seeds, though, sometimes they can take weeks because they need the conditions to
Those
be just
lentils
right.
were from overnight already,
Yeah.
coating coming off,
Yeah.
sprouting right away.
Lentils they sprout very quickly. Beans in general sprout very quickly. The reason is they don't have to wait for sunlight or minerals in the soil because they have it all stored up in the seed. You can take a pea seed and put it in the dark with just water, no minerals or anything like that, and it'll grow to be like this big because based on the nutrition that it has in the seed, right? Other seeds, if you don't give them everything they need, they won't germinate.
Sure.
Because I'm waiting for what I need.
I was actually surprised because Elizabeth chose to place them in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm not going to go bad outside on the kitchen counter. I mean, it is whatever, 75 to 80 degrees in the house, maybe, but that shouldn't go on cause them any harm. But even in the refrigerator, they sprout.
Even in the refrigerator. So
Cold, dark.
cold and dark, yeah. So, but like I said, beans are very easy to germinate. Other plants not so. So I'll talk a little bit more about those, what it takes to get seeds to germinate in a second. In the meantime, I want to show you what the plants look like after they germinate. Okay, so here we have the same seed, right? Here are the cotyledons. Usually they shrivel up, they get smaller and dried out because all the nutrition is left, they're not needed anymore. The roots start to grow out and look like roots, and the shoot grows up and it starts to make leaves, and then it's got this part of the shoot that continues to make new leaves, right? This is the seedling. So I made some seedlings. I planted these guys about a week ago, and so you can see the same thing, right? I'll rip up one. Okay, so you can see this brown thing is the cotyledon, the baby leaf. There's the roots, the leaves. Oh no, there's this. That's the seed coat. The seed coat completely fell out. The cotyledons are up here. You can see they're starting to shrivel up already, and these are the first true leaves. Okay, so The other thing I want to show is I planted 3 kinds of seeds, and they all look very different, right? So these ones look different than these. These ones are just getting started. They started very slowly. So I want to point that out because a lot of times new gardeners, if they plant a seed and they don't see the plant come out right away, they think, oh, there's something wrong with me. I did it wrong. But it's not always the case. These seeds got planted a week before, so these are 2 weeks ago. Am I still in the frame? They're 2 weeks ago, and these ones didn't even grow. Those seeds were dead. I put 4 seeds in every pot, and these ones didn't grow. So, yo sembré antes una semana, 2 semanas para las plantas. Son diferentes tipos de frijoles habituales. Habituales. Y hay 3 tipos, ¿ya? Y entre estas semillas son diferencias. Este empieza ahora, este es más alta y todo. Es normalmente, y digo porque la gente que empiezan a sembrar, cuando no pasa correctamente, creen que yo hago algo incorrecto. Y no es la verdad. Normalmente es algo con la planta, necesita más agua o necesita más tiempo. Entonces yo quiero mostrar qué pasa con habituales.
Some take months and months.
Some of them take
Look at the
months.
package.
I've had some recalcitrant trees that took 8 months to grow. So I'll pass these around so you can take a look.
Las habichuelas.
If you want to, you can take the seeds out.
Excuse me, what is this?
Beans,
Beans?
different beans. There's 3 different kinds of beans. Two pots. Oh, there you go. Showing the beans. These are beans. Okay, and these are, for example, I wanted to show what the larger plants look like. So this is, in this illustration, the plant gets a lot bigger, right? It makes more leaves, and then it also makes these fruits. The pea pods, the bean pods, are actually the fruit of the plant, and that's where the seeds are stored, right? So in this little illustration that I've made, I'm showing how the cycle goes. Let me hold this up so there's a little bit. This is also going to be available as a PDF. Is that visible? Or like that. So you can see it goes from the seed up here, goes through germination, it goes to make a seedling and a plant, and then when you take the seeds off of the plant, you start the whole cycle over again. One of the important things that I hope people understand about growing your own food is that what we're doing is we're tending abundance. You plant 1 mung bean seed and you get, I don't know, 20, 30 seeds depending on the plant, right? We're multiplying, right? We're multiplying our seeds, and there's more than enough for everybody if we plant our own plants for food. Let me hand that over to you. Oh, sorry, it's a little bit, that one's not so. Okay. Okie dokie. So let me do my list. Okay. Let's talk about, now that we've seen the process, right? Vemos el proceso de con semilla, germinación, crece, planta tiene semillas, puede empezar otra vez, ¿no? Just for interest, I wanted to show you, some seeds are very easy to germinate. These are papaya seeds, lechosa, lechosa. All I did is I took them out of the papaya and I put them in here. And when you look, you're gonna have to move it around. You'll see little yellow white things coming out. That's all. They have everything that they need already to go ahead and germinate. There's no soil. I didn't add water, nothing like that. The little white things that you see sticking up, those are the seedlings that are coming out. So some seeds are very, very easy to grow. Very easy to grow. Okay, let's go through the process too, about what does a plant need to grow. So in this case, we're talking about plants that are growing in pots. I want to point out that I do as much recycling as possible. and I don't necessarily clean off the pots because it takes a lot of water to get them clean. So that's what used pots look like. I have pots so we can do some planting later on. But just to explain, like the things that the plants are, the tray that they're in over there, that's all recycled. So it looks a little bit shabby, but it functions just well as well, and the plants are happy to have a place to grow. So what you want to do is you want to have a pot that's going to be about the right size for the big plants. For example, the plants that we just saw, the bean plants, those would be good for transplanting. When the plants get to be a little bit bigger than they are now, you can transplant them into other ground. Usually beans don't like to be transplanted, so I just want to put that in there, that other plants like to grow in pots for a while. You can tell a plant is ready to be transplanted because the roots are starting to come out, right? That's a sign that they've gotten as big as they can in this pot. So if you're planting seeds to transplant, you can use very small pots like those or like these. If you want to grow plants in really large plants, you're going to need larger pots, and it depends on the size of the roots underneath. So that's a consideration about the pot. You have to think about the pot you're going to grow it in. Okay, the next thing is consideration about the soil. So there are lots of different kinds of soil. So I brought some examples. The first example, this is the one that has the little white flecks in it. This is professional seedling soil. Okay, so it's very nice for seedlings to grow in. The pieces are very soft and very small. The little white things help keep the soil aerated. So if the roots get too wet, they're gonna die. Right? So that's one thing you have to think about your soil. You don't want it to be too wet. It's also got fertilizer that's already in the soil, and it's got a surfactant in it. The surfactant is something that helps the soil stay wet. So when you pour the water on it, it immediately gets wet and it stays wet, which is very important for seedlings, right? Seedlings need a lot of moisture. Maybe the big plant doesn't like it like that, but seedlings do. So this is professional potting soil, professional seedling soil. Okay, this bag has the most soil in it. This bag is the compost that we have over here. Okay, so yo hablo de suelo. Okay, suelo es de los profesionales para sembrar, especialmente para la primera 2-3 meses o semanas. Bastante tierra, abono y muy bien para retener minerales y agua también. So, no secar muy rápidamente. Okay. Esto es nuestro composta. Tenemos allá un lomo de composta. Okay. So this is our compost, and when you look at it, our compost is 100% vegetable material, which is very nice, and it's got a lot of sticks and things that are not completely rotted in it, right? So this is very good soil. Especially for larger plants, those pieces will continue to rot and they will become part of the fertilizer. So este composto es solamente de plantas, no hay nada más. Tiene pedazos muy grandes y con tiempo ellos filtran también y abren abono para las plantas. But the thing is, for the baby plants, it's a little bit rough, right? You know, it's not going to have very good contact if there are lots of pieces. So what I did is I took some of that soil and I sifted it. So this is the big chunks, and this is the soil that comes out. This soil looks like the professional potting soil, right? It's very fine, you know, and it's actually where the moisture is in the bag.
Are you going to talk about growing from these seeds too?
Yeah, I will. So what we can do when we go to plant our seeds, let's go ahead and I'll show you how to sift the compost so that we can take out the big chunks, put it on the big plants, and we can have some nice seedling soil like that from our own compost. Okay, I'll pass these over to you. Okay, so este composta tiene pedazos muy grandes y no para los semillas, especialmente los pequeños, no está bien. So, yo he separado las componentes, las grandes y las pequeñas, en este dos, ¿dónde está? Este dos bolsita. So, lo que tiene la materia más fina podemos usar, pero las más grandes para semillas no están muy bien.
Esta no.
Sí. No, está demasiado. Okay, so now let's talk about the things that we need. Oh, let's thank Anna for her help with the video and the social media as well. Thank you very much. All right, have a good day.
Gracias.
We'll see you.
Ya nos vemos.
Okay. So now let's talk about the things that you need. So you need a pot, you need the soil, you need to water the plant, right? Because if the seeds get dried out, they will die. So I also brought my little watering can here. If you use like our big hose over here, or use a big watering can that has a big hole, you can wash the seeds out of the soil. So I have just a small one that I can use to water the seeds, right? And the plants also need sunlight. So again, with water and with sunlight, different plants have different requirements. Right? Some plants really need to be in the full sun, some plants really need to be in the shade, and a lot of plants can be in some of the sun and some of the shade. They can go both ways, right? Also with water, some plants, if their roots get too wet, they will die. This is something that beginners need to know, because a lot of people really want to take care of their plant and water it every day, and they water it and they water it and they water it, and the roots rot and they die, and they think, oh no, I killed another plant, right? So you have to know what amount of water is appropriate for the plant that you're trying to grow, right? So plantas necesitan también agua, ¿no? Pero necesitan no demasiado, no, ¿cómo se dice? Not enough. No bastante.
No mucha ni muy poca.
Okay.
Depende de la planta.
De la planta, ¿ya? Y el suelo también, ¿right? Porque cuando tenemos arena, el agua entra y sale inmediatamente, ¿no? So it also depends on the soil. How much water you give it depends on the soil. Soil that retains water needs to be watered less. So that's the way it goes. Okay, in terms of light, there are a lot of seedlings, especially the plants that grow in the jungle. They like to be in the shade when they're small, so they're about this big. And then you can move them into full sunlight. Now, if you guys remember when we were planting the first plants in the beds, some of them, they looked great. We put them in and they immediately started to look not so great. They changed colors, they were yellow, they weren't doing so well. The leaves perked up a little bit. That's because we moved them from low light to high light. And in the case of the aloe vera, they adjust and they're going to be just fine. Some plants, they won't adjust. Other plants need a lot of sunlight. If you put them in the shade, they grow long, they get yellow, they look sickly, they're not happy. So you have to take into consideration the amount of light that you give your seedlings. Okay? So las plantas necesitan luz, ¿no?
Sí.
Pero también como agua demasiado no está bien, no bastante está tampoco bien. Okay? So cada planta está un poquito diferente. Okay? Okay. So since we're talking about how to grow plants from seeds, one of the tricky parts of growing plants from seeds is the germination, because germination is very different for different plants, right? So I want to talk to you about the parameters that are necessary to do germination. And I'll talk about the standard procedure, and then I'll talk about some exceptions, right? Some plants that have lots of different requirements, okay? So the seed must be viable. That means it has to be alive, okay? Para sembrar una semilla necesita estar viviendo, okay? So if you have to store your seeds, you want to keep them in a place that is cool and dry. Okay. If it's too cold, like it freezes, the embryo, when it freezes, it will actually rupture because the ice crystals in it. So you want it cool but not frozen. And dry, again, you want it to be dry but not so desiccated that it can't get started. If you keep your seeds, like if you get your seed packet wet, right, the seeds will die because it's too moist. They'll try to germinate and they'll lose their ability to become a plant. So not too dry, not too wet, and not too cold and not too warm. So what I do is my seeds I keep in the refrigerator, so that's about 4 degrees centigrade which is a good temperature for them. And the refrigerator also, things get dried out in the refrigerator. If you leave lettuce in there too long, it's drying it out. So that's actually drying conditions. So that's good. So para how do you say store? You want to store your seeds somewhere.
Pues si vas a aguantar.
Okay. Las semillas necesitan que no está muy húmedo y no muy caliente. So, en la nevera está perfecto porque la temperatura está abajo, so, fría.
Sí.
Y dentro de la nevera es un poquito secado. Cuando pongo la lechuga mucho tiempo, so el agua sale.
Sí, sale, sí.
¿Ya?
Ya yo lo controlo.
So, pero demasiado frío. Congelado no está bien. Y cuando está totalmente seco, tampoco está bien. Okay? So when you germinate, the plants need to get water, which we've talked about, but not too much water, right? Some seedlings need light to germinate, right? So one of the things you want to consider when you're planting is how deep you put the seed in the pot, right? Right? So the rule of thumb is however big the seed is, you need twice that volume of soil above it. Okay? Para una semilla, ¿qué profundo? ¿Ya? ¿Qué profunda esta pregunta? Para una semilla tiene así, necesitamos 2 arriba, como así. Okay? So with these beans, you can push them in. The bean is about this big, so you want to push them in about that deep in the soil. The seeds that are very, very fine, right? Tiny little seeds that look like dust. The way you can plant those is you put the soil on the top, you put the seeds on, and then you sprinkle some of the soil on the top of it. Okay, so that way they're in contact with the soil so that they can get the water, but they're not pushed down. If you push it down too far, it'll germinate, but then it'll die because it can't get enough sunlight already. Okay, so con las semillas muy pequeñas pueden poner el suelo y arriba las semillas y después un poquito suelo sobre las semillas. No mucho. So we talked about the depth, we talked about water, sunlight, and the temperature is also very good. One of the problems with growing things in full sun is that the seed pot gets really hot. The soil, because it's dark, gets really hot. This is not good for seeds, right? The hotter it gets, the better chances are that it will die. So if you want to grow it in the full sun, what I recommend is you put some mulch on top of the soil. Mulch just like we've done here with the grass, dried grass. It could be leaves. You could put a piece of cloth or a piece of cardboard. It doesn't really matter, to protect the pots that are in full sun if you think the seeds are going to be really sensitive. You don't have to do it with beans, but other plants that might be sensitive to the heat, you can cover the pots so that they stay cool. So cuando las plantas están en el sol fuerte, el suelo está un poquito caliente y para algunas semillas no está bien que están calientes. Se puede cubrir el suelo con algo, con rama seca. Very good. Okay, now let me talk. So when you guys get the PDF, there'll be a list. Oh, you have the list. Can I look at the second page so I can remember to tell you everything I thought of you?
You're going to put that in the chat?
It's already in the chat, but I'll put it in the chat again. Okay, so oh yeah. Another thing is the plants, when they start to make roots, they're going to want some food, right? So you need to put some fertilizer in there right away. So primero, cuando la raíz empieza, la planta necesita abono. So es mejor que abono está en el suelo antes que empieza. Okay. Depth of planting, water and drainage, intensity of light. Okay, now there's certain seeds that are super hard to grow. First of all, real small seeds are hard to grow, right? Big seeds have all their nutrition that they need. They're easy, but really small ones are usually much more difficult to grow. what was I going to say? I forgot what it is. Okay, here in the tropics, we have a lot of seeds that are called recalcitrant. Recalcitrant means that they just have trouble making the effort of growing, right? Examples are lime and mango. These are seeds that need to be treated in a special way. Now, the thing is, they cannot dry out at all. So, hablo de las semillas de mango, limón y otras que necesitan una situación un poquito especial, más fuerte, porque no pueden ningún tiempo secarse. Necesita siempre un poquito. So the best way to grow these is to take a Ziploc bag and like here, Elizabeth put some paper towel around the roots so that the water stays in contact, but the seeds can breathe through the paper towel. Oh, sorry, Shannon. Sorry about that. You brought this the seedlings. I'm all mixed up. So this is kind of what you want to do with the seeds. You want to take a Ziploc plastic bag. And so you can walk out that way. That's okay. You can take a Ziploc plastic bag, put the seeds in between the pieces of paper towel that are wet, and oh, there you go. Nice.
This is dragon fruit.
Oh, nice.
I just threw, and a lot of them died because I didn't take care
Okay,
of
so she's using the same concept.
That's
She's
why I
using
said yes.
the paper
I put
towel to
on a
keep it
napkin,
moist.
I put the seeds in there and cover it up and they come up.
But you can see when you have the paper towel, there's also a little bit of air in there too. So they're wet, but they can still breathe.
Right.
Even if you close the Ziploc bag, they're going to have enough air when you put it in there. And so what you want to do is, put the seeds in there, cover it up, make sure you squeeze the water out so there's not too much water. Like this is too much. If you open it up and it drips out, you want all that water to go out when you do the recalcitrant seeds. You zip it up and then you leave it in a dark place and you leave it for a week, a month. In one case, mine took 8 months. You just keep going and looking, and you'll know when they grow because the seedling will start to come out, or the roots will start to come out. And then you can take them and plant them. You just need to be sure that they stay really wet and they don't get dried out. So you can do this if you're worried about them getting dried out. You can take a paper plastic bag and put it over the pot. Put the pot in the bag so that they stay wet. And do that for a couple of days until they start to take off, get some sunlight and stuff like that. So those are recalcitrant seeds. And I mention that because here, a lot of the tropical fruits, especially in the really juicy, fleshy fruits, those ones are going to need special care. And again, a lot of times beginners think, I kill all the plants, I can't get anything to grow, is because they took a mango seed that was already dry and they put it in a pot and it's not going to grow. Okay? So, so hablo de plantas tropicales y las semillas son entonces. Okay, so another couple of things that you might need to do if your seeds are just not growing. If you have a really hard seed, you may need to take that seed and make a little cut in the seed coat, right? If you make a little cut, the water can get into the seed. Some seed coats are meant to go into a bird and out the other end, right? And so they have to be really, really tough, or like through an iguana or something. So they have to be really tough. So they're designed not to take water in too early, right? So if you want those seeds to grow, you can just take a razor or a knife or something, and you make a little nick so that the water, so you can see the seed inside, so the water can go inside, and then it'll swell up and it'll grow just fine. Another thing is that some seeds, especially the ones that have to go in through a digestive system, they need a little bit of acid. So you can put them in dilute vinegar and see if that helps to get the seeds germinated. Okay, hay semillas que necesitan entrar un animal como pájaro y salir. Sí. Sí. Entonces, para sembrar estos necesito comer. Podemos hacer un pequeño abierto parte. So we cut it a little bit, yeah. So, entonces el agua puede entrar. Para manchas necesitan ácido ácido para romper el cubierto de semillas. The joy of presenting outside, huh? Okay. So another one is that some seeds need a specific light ratio for the number of hours in the day and the number of hours at night. So there are long days and short days, and there are long day plants and short day plants. This also has to do with the intensity of light too, because it's more intense during the summer. So if your plant isn't growing, you might look it up and see if you need to plant it at a certain time of year. For example, a lot of temperate plants, they need to be planted in the spring so they don't freeze in the winter, and then they have the full growing season to grow. But some of them need to be planted in the fall, so they're in the soil, and they get conditioned by the soil so that when the spring comes, they can grow. So muchas semillas necesitan entrar al suelo en un tiempo del año, ¿ya? So no en enero, ya, porque la semilla puede entender cuántas horas del sol tiene un día y no empieza hasta el correctamente tiempo. Okay. I also want to mention that here, the indigenous people and the people who try to grow like the indigenous people are very careful about the phase of the moon. So, fase de la luna. Es también importante. The Tainos, believe it or not, they knew, okay, so some plants you want to plant in the full moon and some in the new moon, and all this sort of stuff. The Tainos could tell by the pulse in their arm if it was the right time to plant, because they could feel the difference in the full moon and the new moon in their pulse, and they use that as their guideline for how to plant plants. This following the moon was also used in Europe by the people, the unconquered peoples of Europe until they started conquering everybody. So, and if you think about it, on this side of the earth and on that side of the earth, if people are using it, there's probably something to it. A lot of people will poo-poo it. I poo-pooed it myself. But I've had so many people say, my uncle had 2 beds. They planted this bed whenever they felt like planting, and this one they did according to the moon, and the plants were just astoundingly different in their productivity. So I think there's something to it, so I mention it to you if you want to consider it. So los taínos siembran las semillas en una parte de este fase de luna, y ellos pueden conocer si es el tiempo correcto del pulso del cuerpo, pueden sentir que está, ahora vamos a sembrar. Yeah.
And also when you cut.
And when you cut,
the plant,
that's right. Para coser también. So es una cosa que en nuestro tiempo la gente dice, no es importante, puede sembrar cuando quiero, pero también en Europa, en el tiempo antiguo, la gente hacen con la luna también. Creo que hay algo, pero no entiendo qué es. Es sí. Okay, some seeds need a specific color of light to germinate, especially red light. Right? So these need to be very close to the surface, and they need to be exposed to the sun during the sunset. Some seeds need blue light. So it's a very, very complicated thing that happens in plants. You probably won't have to worry about these. You plant them, they grow, that's okay. But if you want to do really specialty things, those are some things. The other one is absence of inhibitors. So absence of inhibitors. Inhibitors are things that will stop a seed from germinating, right? Something, a chemical or something that's in the pot will stop it from germinating. And this is also important because even homemade compost can have inhibitors in it. So if you get compost and you want to grow sensitive seeds in it, try it with other seeds and see if they're coming up. Or you can compare with compost and on paper towels to see if that's what's doing it. Because honestly, if you've got inhibitors in your soil, it will decimate your germination.
What is an inhibitor?
An inhibitor is a compound that somehow.
I know what.
Like an example of it?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are some plants that put a chemical into the ground that inhibits growth. It literally stops cell division. Okay? If you collect leaves from that plant and you grind them up and you put them in your compost, that inhibitor lasts for years.
How do you know which is which?
Yeah, so you just try to grow things in the soil, and if you can't grow anything in it, it's got inhibitors. Can you explain the concept of inhibitors? So a lot of times, young compost has inhibitors in it, whereas the same compost 6 months later won't have the inhibitors. That's also, if you think there's a problem with the compost, you can let it sit out. One thing that you have to be careful of is a lot of people get herbicides. Herbicides means plant killer, literally. You get herbicides. Some of those herbicides degrade within 6 months. They're not so bad. Some of them take 7 to 20 years to degrade. Do not let contaminated soil into your garden. If you must, test every load of soil that comes into your garden for herbicides. The easiest way to do it is to grow beans and potatoes, beans and tomatoes. If they come up and they look wrinkly and they're all pale and stuff like that, don't use that soil. Okay, and so that's pretty much all the stuff that I had about growing seeds. So now,
I want to say something.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, something that
Come stand here so you can get recorded.
what I like to do is throw stuff in pots, like tomato seeds, any kind of tomato seeds, pepper seeds, and citrus and different trees. I get a little pot and I just throw the seeds in there, like tomatoes. See, these are, she does one, but I can't do that. So see, I just do the seed. The tomato thing is here. I just threw everything in here and they're coming up. And then tomatoes are really easy because I just get this and I pull it out and I plant it. And tomatoes, you should try to plant it as deep as you can. I mean, you could even like take a pot and if it's too long, get as much as the stem as you can because it'll make them stronger.
Yeah, the tomato is nice like that. It'll root from anything that touches the ground. So the bigger the roots, the better the fruit, right? So you can, if you've got, one thing you can do, if you've got a long plant like this, right, and it's been in a little pot for too long, you can take that plant and lay it down and cover it with soil. That works too, right? And you can go right up to the leaves. You can put the soil right over the baby leaves, right up to here. So as deep as you want to. So she mentioned that some people, because I noticed you do too, you plant a whole bunch of seeds in one pot, right? And I tend to plant one seed or like 4 seeds per pot. The reason is because a lot of the seeds I buy are expensive. And if I grow a whole bunch of seeds and I only plant 3 of them, it's kind of wasteful, right? So a lot of times I just put 4 seeds in a pot. But if you've got the seeds and they're abundant, you can plant them out. And some people, when they plant in the ground, they'll dig a little trench and they'll shake the seeds in there and cover them up and let them grow. And then you can weed out the weak seedlings so the strongest plants grow. That's another advantage to growing several seeds, at one time.
But citrus is good. Like if there's no seeds now. I mean, oranges, lemons, all the citrus, there's no seeds in there. So when I find one with seeds, that's very precious. So I'll get a pot and I'll put the seeds in there and I'll put what it is.
Yeah.
And then whichever ones come up, I bring them to the plant swap.
Yeah.
So I have some lemons.
Yeah, that's good. We have lots. I still have some in my house.
It's really good to get plants.
Okay, so I'm gonna just, we're gonna plant some seeds. I got some seeds, I got some pots in here. So we're gonna plant some seeds. So we'll first start by sifting some of this compost. But before we start that, I wanna ask some questions and then I wanna have some announcements, okay? So does anybody have any burning questions, things that they're just really puzzled about? Yes?
You mentioned about seeding things with moon phases.
Uh-huh.
So I wanted to go and ask if you perhaps have heard of electroculture or
Yes.
farming.
Yeah, I have.
What your opinion is of that, because there too
Right.
is undeniable.
Right. Okay, so I first have to give you a little background. I was trained as a scientist, and science is actually quite dogmatic about a lot of things, right? And so if there's no experiment that says this works, people say it doesn't work. I don't really think that's good science to say that way, because things exist before you do experiments. So let's do the experiments and find out. However, I have heard individuals tell me that they've done it. They put the copper whatever thing in the garden, and it really has an
I would
effect.
stick with it. Copper wire. Yeah.
So the thing is, okay, so we remember the Cold War, right? So Russia and the United States, they didn't have anything to do with each other. So a very good long time, Russian scientists were doing their own science, and they didn't have communication with the West, and the West didn't have communication with them. And in several cases, the Russians went off on these tangents that the West finds, a little bit bizarre or woo-woo or whatever. There have been people who have studied electrical fields and living things, and they've come up with some real data about it. I don't know what the data is. I don't know what the conclusion is, but I think it stands to reason. If you've got the space, try it and see. Grow a row here with a rod, and grow a row over here without a rod, and see if it affects. We are all electrical beings. Our very minds, our nerves, our cells, how our blood pumps, right? Everybody thinks the heart pumps the blood. It doesn't. What it does is it does a little bit of pumping, and it synchronizes pumps that are all through the body, through electrical signals. We are electrical beings. So why should we ignore that whole aspect of our living being and say, no, poo-poo, that doesn't exist. That's some crank science or something like that, right?
Well, most people ignore it because of the fact that once things are actually observed, the results might be different too, right?
That's right. It could be. Let's say you have two beds, and this bed has got really horrible soil, and this one's got really good soil, and you put your rod over here, and there's no effect, right? So if you're going to do an experiment, you have to do experiments a certain way to be able to know that you've done it right. Like you have to have a control, for example, right? You use some compost.
It's a wooden stick with copper wired around it, clockwork, like a clockwise, yeah. So
Okay.
bottom up clockwise.
Another thing that people think is woo is the biodynamics people, also the people who grow by the moon. When they before they water the plants, if they put in fertilizer in, they stir it 7 times in this direction and 7 times in this direction. Okay. And people say, now how can that, it's in there, it doesn't matter if you stir it in or not. If it's diffuse in the water, it doesn't matter. But, water, I had a friend who was studying to be a captain of a nuclear submarine. And he had to take classes on water because you do all of your work under the water and you need to know about pressure and temperature and all this. He took 2 years of chemistry about water only. That means there's a lot to know about water, and that's probably just the tip of the iceberg. We don't even really know. So, water is also electrical. It's made out of ions. That's how come it's liquid, right? So let's not poo-poo everything. If you're interested, I say give it a try, and then let us know what happens. So
I keep telling Inspector to go and check it out.
Yeah. Some of it's not going to work out. You're not going to see any difference, and it'll be a waste of time. You'll have a whole bunch of copper wire or something that you can't use for something else. But it's worth a try, if it's going to grow, One thing I forgot to mention about how to take care of plants is plants need attention. And at the very basic, what I mean is you need to go look at them and see, do they need water? Are they getting too much sun?
You can talk to them too.
But a lot of people swear by
Sure.
talking about it.
And it works.
That goes back to that electromagnetic culture that I was asking about, because there's the experiment too. On one bottle you write hate, and the other one love, and every time whatever is in the hate bottle, it always dies.
Right.
Yeah. So plants and us as physical beings, we are so much more complicated than science our current state of science can ever understand fully. So why not hedge your bets? What's it going to do to say, hey plant, how's it going today? Hope you're doing well. It's not going to hurt anything. Just try it,
Well, it is interesting fact that it was funny at the same time. We had a desert rose, and I've been saying to it ever since. It was like the most beautiful rose I've ever seen in my life. Like literally, and it was blooming so much. It's incredible. I've never ever seen, and because we do have across the street our neighbor's desert rose thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. For those of people who are stuck in the dogma. So people who are stuck in the dogma. If you're going to your plant and you're singing to it every day, you're giving it a lot of attention, and you're looking and you're saying, oh, there's a bug. Let me get the bug off. Or, oh, it's a little bit too damp, I better not water today. You know, all those things that you're doing while you're observing it are contributing to the physical state of the plant by your care and attention and how you respond to it. So
We've been hugging and kissing our
hug it and kiss it, let it know, you know. I mean, I speak to my own organs as well. They seem to like it, so that's good. Does anybody else have some questions? No?
Actually, about desert rose, I ask you, have you heard the fact like they're moody, like you're not supposed to change their environment? Because ours, I've read about that, and it was interesting that it was storm coming, and I just moved her a little bit, and she dropped all the leaves.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the most beautiful desert rose.
No, this is okay. So there's a lot of things that can make a plant moody like that. One thing is some plants have very, very fragile roots. And if you move them this much, the root hairs will all fall off, which means they'll be thirsty no matter how much water you give them for 2 weeks. So that's one thing that can happen. Another thing is plants are very sensitive to their environment. So if you take 2 tomato plants and they're exactly the same, and one tomato plant you come and go like this with a stick every day, the one that's been hit with a stick will end up being much shorter than the other one because they sense that physical impact and they change how rapidly they expand the cells. They make them less brittle, shorter, and stuff like that. So there are a lot of plants are all very sensitive to the environment, but some plants, like people, some people are.
Like the tomato, that would be fine moving it around, but basil, if you move it, even though you put it in, cut off a branch, put it in water, 2 days later you got fruits. You put it in dirt and it goes like, and you think it's dead, but it's not. It takes longer, but it comes back.
Those have very fragile roots, right?
Yeah,
The roots that you can see are not going to work in the ground. It literally has to make new roots before it gets enough water. So, I can't even tell you. It would take me 2 or 3 hours to list all the things that plants perceive and respond to. So yes, some plants are moody. The best way to do it is, again, attention. Pay attention to it. You know, it is, you move it and it's like, doesn't look good. And the next time you move it, same thing. Okay, pick a spot and leave it there, right? Same thing with
children, you gotta take care of them. You have to make sure that if they only want water once a week, give it to them once a week. Don't give it to them every day. You gotta make sure, take care of their needs. Because they're all different.
So in permaculture, we call this a principle: observe and respond, right? And I call that attention. You just give them your loving attention, right? Okay. Any other questions?